بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. In addition to the debit card and the credit card, there is something is called multiple cards. Multiple cards means credit and debit card at the same time. Now, the way that they provide this service, showing clearly that this kind of card is a debit one. What means that if you do not have cash money deposited in your account, you cannot have the multiple card. So at the end of the day, it's not more than a debit card. What is the benefit of using this card exchangeably, credit card or debit card? Two benefits. The first one, if you choose to use it as a credit card, it might delay or defer your payment. So instead of charging your account directly, they might wait until the end of the month and then they withdraw the amount, even though it is a debit card, but you have chosen to use it as a credit card. Second of all, in some points of sale, they do not take debit cards. So in order for you to purchase or to transact, you need to have a credit card, so you can use it as a credit card. At the end of the day, it is a debit card. So there is all the rules that we mentioned regarding the debit card should be implemented in this case with no difference. How about having saving accounts? When you have a saving account, it means that you deposit a specific amount of money in the bank and they guarantee you, usually not a lump sum, they guarantee you a specific percentage of profit. They call it interest, they call it profit, whatever they want to call it. Now, before we proceed, what is the Islamic interpretation of this transaction? Again, what is the Islamic identification of this transaction? Is it a sale contract or a loan contract or none of the above? What do you think? It is a loan, even though it's not mentioned in the contract or in the agreement that you lend the money to the bank. And some people might raise a question: do you think that the bank is poor enough to to borrow money from you? Actually, you do not have money like the bank, so they do not agree that this contract is a loan. Actually, it is. Why we take this transaction as a loan? As you all know now, after having this solid background about the rules of loan in Islam, if the lender, if the one who provides the money guarantees the capital, okay, then this is a loan, right? Now, in Islam, actually, if you borrowed some money, I'm now talking about the ideal situation. The ideal situation. If you have a trust or wadi'ah, for example, you do not guarantee it. I mean, if it is damaged for some reason, if it is damaged without any negligence from your side, you are not responsible. I mean, whatever happened to the trust. But when it comes to loan in Islam, if you are the borrower, then you have to guarantee the money and pay it back, regardless of what you did with the money. You do have the right to use the money. You might generate profit, you might struggle loss, regardless. The money or the capital have been provided to you by the lender or by the financier is guaranteed. Now, back to the saving account. The interpretation or the identification of this transaction is that you are the one who is lending money to the bank, regardless of the financial status of the bank, regardless if they believe or not that you are lending them. This is again the Islamic interpretation of this transaction. You are the lender and the bank is the borrower. They do guarantee you the money. In addition to that, they tell you in advance by signing a contract with them or by establishing a saving account that you will receive a 3% of interest. 3% of interest. Now, by being involved in this transaction, actually, you are doing, or the person who does so, he is involving himself in something prohibited by itself, because he is already involved. He knows that the 1,000 will be $1,030 by the end of the month. Worse than that, they capitalize the interest. I mean, they take the interest and add it as a capital, and they start calculating your interest on that, and you keep having interest on the interest, and so on and so forth. So it is an explicit involvement in a usurious transaction. You are lending money to the bank, and the bank makes money by lending the money to a third party. They take, for example, 7% interest. They give you 3% and they keep 4% for themselves as a resource of income or generating money for the bank. This percentage is definitely riba, and it is unlawful. Now there is a question here. Is it lawful for the Muslim to have an intention from the beginning that I will have a saving account, but my intention, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, like what I have heard from some others, that I will not use this money. It is 100% for the masjid or for the Islamic school. Why don't we be more smart than them and having some saving accounts and getting the interest and pay it, or benefiting the Muslim community out having this interest? Rationally speaking, logically speaking, it makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to the rules of riba that we have learned, having a saving account is an explicit involvement in a useless transaction. It is an interest-bearing loan. So regardless of how noble and how sincere is the intention of the Muslim, he cannot involve himself in a saving account. Now this is the conservative approach. Now to be neutral as a student of knowledge, I have to tell you the other approach have been declared by some of the contemporary, reputable and famous scholars, without mentioning names. They said in the West, you do have the right to have a saving account, because your money will be invested anyway. Even if you have a checking account without taking your permission, they will invest your money. So again, why don't we be more smart than the bank, and having saving accounts and having an agreement with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will never use the interest for ourselves. It will be deducted 100%, to benefit the Muslim community. They said that having saving accounts is permissible because the money will be invested anyway. With all due respect, until now, I do not believe in that. I remember once I had a long discussion with Dr. Salah Sawi, my sheikh, maybe for half an hour regarding this specific point, and he was just thinking loudly. He does not adopt this opinion at all. He said, some people say, and he mentioned the exact words that I now said. What do you think, Dr.Main? Do you think that we should revise the issue and think about it? I said, it is maslahatul mulgha. It is a benefit, but it is cancelled. I mean, it is not a considered benefit, in Islam, and just we did not continue talking about this issue. So my point again is that we have I don't like to call it a liberal approach, but it is an approach, and it makes a lot of sense, because again, the money will be invested anyway. Even if you have a checking account, your money will be invested anyway. So why don't we have a saving account? This is the other approach. I do not believe in that at all, because my point is that establishing or having or opening saving account is an explicit involvement in a usurious loan. You lend the bank and the bank give you extra money. There is no way for this transaction to be justified. Wallahu a'lam. What kind of prohibited matter is it? Is it haramun li dhatihi or haramun li ghayri according to our classification? It is haramun li dhatihi, because there is no way for you not to take the riba. You know in advance that once you have a saving account, you will receive some extra money by default. Then this is a riba. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, another misconception is already raised, that having checking account will subject the account for identity theft, right? I mean, some people might have an access in some way or another to the money and get it. This is right, but there is another way to protect your money. If you have a good amount of money, you can establish 2 different checking accounts. The first one with a few hundred or a few $1,000s to pay your utility bills and your monthly and daily expenses. Okay, and the other one to save your money. Do not publicize the information of the checking account that you are using to save your money. Just keep it for yourself. This is the best way to save and to secure your money without being involved in riba and taking riba out of having this account. Another checking account, as I said, using the new checking account will publicize the information and eventually being subject to identity theft. So 2 checking accounts, one for your daily and weekly and monthly expenses and utility bills, and the other one only to save your money, because logically speaking, your house or your home is not the right place to save your money. It might be stolen. How about checking accounts? Let me ask you the exact question. Is it a sale contract or loan contract or none of them? It is It's none of them. You do have some money and you deposit the money in a checking account. So there is a public need to secure money and to facilitate daily transactions. You cannot keep your thousands of dollars, at home, because again, this is not the right place to save or to secure your money. You have to have a checking account. Now here is the problem here in the US and even in the Middle East, because again the capitalist economic system is worldwide implemented. It's not only here in the US, even in the Middle East, even in the Muslim society, unfortunately, the banks there use your money without even taking your permission. Even if you have a checking account, according to their statistics, maybe more than 60 up to 70% of the deposit amount are not to be withdrawn. So if we think that they just save the money and waiting for you until you come and get your money, that's not right. They use your money without taking your permission. They lend the money to a third party, okay, with the riba. And the problem here is that they give you zero. They give you nothing. They enjoy the whole, interest, the whole riba, and you take just nothing. Why? Because your checking account is a free of charge, free of interest checking account. What I want to say is that indirectly, every one of us who has a checking account, he participates in some way, somehow, in supporting and endorsing the conventional banks to keep working and to keep, investing our money in a prohibited way. However, because of the true need of having this checking account, we cannot say that having a checking account is prohibited, providing that we do not allow the bank, at least outwardly, we do not allow the bank to use the money. If they want to use our money from behind the scene, they are responsible. We are not responsible, for that. And in this case, we have to make sure that we have a free of interest, free of charge checking account, because some checking accounts nowadays in some banks actually they do give you some interest even on the checking account, as long as the money is there. They tell you from the beginning that the more you keep the money, the more interest you have. So make sure from the beginning, if you want to follow this approach, to have a free of interest, free of charge checking account. In some Muslim countries, or maybe here in the US, if you have, just hypothetically say, if you have an Islamic service or Islamic bank who provide you all the services that you need, believe it or not, establishing or having a checking account in a conventional bank is prohibited, because you do not need to have a checking account with a conventional bank. Are you looking for an Islamic substitute? It's there, available. Are you looking for a checking account? They can save your money. Are you looking for halal investment? It's there. So you cannot establish a checking account as long as there is an Islamic alternative. If there is no Islamic alternative or substitute, then having checking account is permissible because of the pressing need of having this service. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَنْ يَشْفَعْ شَفَاعَةً سَيِّئَةً يَكُنْ لَهُ كِفْلٌ مِنْهَا. Whomever participates in doing bad deeds will share the punishment or the sin of this bad deeds. This is why, again, if there is an Islamic alternative, having a checking account with a conventional bank is prohibited. Financing. Some people mistakenly think that if the seller offered the buyer more than one option, like for example, you want to buy a car for $5,000, for instance, okay, and the seller told you that this car is for $5,000 cash if you want to pay them right now. If you want to do an installment or monthly payment for 1 year, it's going to be $6,000. If you want to make your payment for 3 years, it's going to be $7,000. Okay, you have three options: $5,000 cash, $6,000 for 1 year payment, $7,000 for 2 years, or let's make it in this way: $7,000 for 2 years. Now, up to this point, what is the status of having these three options? Believe it or not, having more than one option based on the duration of your payment is halal. It is not haram, because he does have the right to sell you the car for $7,000 cash. It's his property. It's his asset. He wanna sell it in the price that he is comfortable with. So having different options is halal. The only thing that you should worry about is that you have to make sure that you come up with an agreement with one of the options. Do not just turn on the engine and take your car without signing a contract with him, without knowing that this car is going to be for 6,000 for 1 year or 7,000 for 2 years. You have to come up with one of the three or more than one option. And actually, this is not my fatwa. This is something have been declared maybe 30 years ago by the fiqh councils in the Middle East and the Islamic world. Al-bay'u bil-taqsiti mubah. That's why I said here, as long as the two parties come up with an agreement on one of the two parties. This permissibility is stipulated with three conditions. The two parties have to agree upon only one of the two options. It's either $6,000 for 1 year, or it is 7,000 for 2 years. Having a vague agreement or ambiguous one is definitely prohibited. You have to, the price has to be well determined, well defined from the beginning. If it is a finance if it's not a cash payment, then the monthly payment has to be agreed upon and well defined from the beginning. The second stipulation, the two parties have to agree upon only one of the two options. No third party allowed to finance, no late fees are allowed. What do you mean by no third party is allowed to finance? Does that mean that any involvement for a third party is prohibited by default? We do not mean that, actually. The involvement of the third party basically is not prohibited, but the way that the third party is involved here in the US is the prohibited way. I will give you an example. There is an Islamic instrument of finance, we call it bay'u al-murabaha. Bay'u al-murabaha. It means that someone who is interested in buying a car for $5,000, he does not have the money. So he approaches the bank, showing them the car that he is interested in. Based on his request, the bank would buy the car, holding the title as an owner. And then they resell the car one more time to the client with different price. They sell it on a monthly pay, they do an installment, with a monthly plan for 2 years. In order for them to do this taqsit or installment, they sell it for $6,000. This is one of the Islamic ways of financing. This is what we mean by bay'u al-murabaha. So what I want to conclude here is that having a third party is not prohibited by default. No. Having third party here in the US, according to the way that is conducted here in the US, is prohibited. Because the third party here in the US does not possess the car or own it. They just finance for it. What means that they lend you the money, but the only difference, they do not handle the money, to you. They pay the price on your behalf to the seller. And then they charge you the original amount plus extra money, which is definitely riba. So this is why we say no third party allowed to finance. If this is the way it is financed, if there is an Islamic way, even here in the US, it's more than welcome to take it. Let me ask you this question. Involving a third party here in the US, is it haramun li dhatihi or haramun li ghayrihi? Haramun li ghayrihi. If you know in advance that the third party will lend you the money and charge you extra money, is it haramun? Is it prohibited by itself or because of its consequences? By itself, because it is an explicit involvement in a user's loan. You ask the third party to finance for you, and you know in advance that you're going to pay him back the exact amount plus extra money, which is definitely riba. Now, is it the case with the late fees? If there is a minute that if you did not pay on time, there will be a charge of $25 per day, for example. Now this minute by itself, is it haramun? Is it prohibited because of itself or because of its consequences? Because of its consequences. Because again, there is a good possibility if you keep paying systematically on time, that there will be no late fees. However, can you avoid having this point or this minute in the contract? It's a standard. You take it or you leave it. So just say that if you have two options, one of them with late fees and the other one without late fees, by default, logically speaking, you have to go with the other one. But if it is not the case, which is most probably here the case in the US, that late fees is always there, then you can go ahead and proceed with this transaction. Just you make sure that you pay your monthly payment on time to avoid any extra charge. Back to the finance issue. One of the practical solutions, like if you try to finance through the car dealership, and you ended up with a conclusion that there is a riba involved because there is a third party, and the third party, as we said, does finance for you, what means that he does pay the price on your behalf and charge you the original amount plus extra money, there is a solution. It might work, it might not. Some of the car dealership actually, they do it in this way. They ask you for a down payment. They ask you for a good down payment to be paid in order for them to make it zero finance. Like if the car, for example, worth 25,000, with the finance, with the interest, with the riba, it becomes 30,000, okay? They ask you for 5,000, cash up front. If you pay them, they will be more than happy to give you a zero finance or a zero interest finance. This is just a way, to go away from paying interest. What they do exactly is that they capitalize the interest. What does that mean? According to their calculation, they want to make $5,000 riba. If you pay them upfront as a part of the price, if you show them that you are willing to buy the car for 30,000 instead of 25, they will agree with that. They will take the 5,000 as their quote-unquote interest, and they, finance you with zero interest. From our point of view, actually, it's not riba, because there is agreement from the beginning that you are willing to buy this car for 30,000 instead of 25, so there is no riba involved. Even if they think that they tricked you by, charging you the riba in advance, actually they did not. From our point of view, it's not a riba. Again, it might work with some car dealerships. It might not. But it's worth give it a try. As I said, any late fees are riba, and you do not have the right to eliminate or not to have this point in the contract. It's there, and this kind of contract is among the dominating contracts. We call them in al-fiqh al-Islami al-uqud al-idhan. Just make sure that you pay your monthly payment on time to avoid having any late fees. Now, when it comes to car purchase through lease, purchase option, could you describe the transaction for me? What does it mean for you, lease to purchase option? What does it mean for you? Again, the same question that we always ask. Is it a sale contract? Is it a loan contract, or what? This is, if you want to simplify the transaction, yes. They have a car and they are willing to lease the car for you for 3, 4, or 5 years. The monthly payment is well defined and agreed upon from the beginning. By the end of the lease contract, they do have you the right, or actually the priority, to buy the car if you want, based on a predetermined price, or sometimes they determine the price after the end of the lease contract. Okay, you do have the right to return the car and get another car on the same, with the same deal, lease to purchase option. Now, the question here, is it a sale contract? It is not. There is no sale contract. Is it a loan contract? It is not. So it is a lease contract. As we have learned from the beginning, that the lease contract Islamically is basically not subject to riba. There is no way for riba to be involved in the transaction. However, the way that they conduct this transaction here in the US is more complicated, as I said, than what we think. Once you agree with the car dealership to lease the car, they sell the car to the bank, which is the third party to finance by buying the car, and then whatever they receive from you, they direct the amount or the monthly payment to the bank directly. Why they involve this transaction, honestly, I do not know. But they are not willing to release a car or to lease you a car without actually selling the car to the bank. Whatever they do beyond then, the transaction signed or agreed upon between you and the car dealership, you are not held responsible for it. So let them do whatever they want, even if there is an interest or riba or fees, whatever they want to name it, we do not care. It's a lease contract. I lease it from what I assume that he is the owner of the car. The duration of the lease contract is well known for all of us. The monthly payment, the conditions, the stipulations are well known. So there is, wallahu alam, there is no way for a riba to be involved in this transaction. Charging an employee when withdrawing from his 401k. As an employee, you do have the right to establish your 401k plan. It's a kind of IRA, individual retirement, account. However, as you know, it has to be. Your monthly payment has to be matched with the company that you work for. The total amount invested for you in your 401k plan is due in case of, or in one of three cases, either, Allah forbids, death, disability, or reaching the retirement age. But what if you choose to withdraw some or the whole amount before the due date? Do you have an access to this money or not? You do have an access, but actually because you violated the wisdom behind establishing this, this account, which is to save you some money for the retirement. I mean, once you reach the retirement age, they charge you some money. And for legal purposes, just to avoid paying taxes, they call it what? They call it loan. They lend you some of the money. From our point of view as Muslims, it is not a loan. Simply because the amount in your 401k plan is your money, right? So you are talking, you do have an access to sometimes they give you up to 40 or 50% of the total amount of your 401k plan. You do have the right to withdraw up to 50%. They call it loan to avoid paying tax on this money. However, from our point of view, it is not a loan. Because of that, they charge you interest. They charge you penalty sometimes. They ask you to pay money, and this money actually will be added to your account one more time. So it is exactly as if you are taking some money from one pocket and put it in the other pocket. There is no riba involved in this transaction at all. The other question is how to invest in your 401k plan. Some people actually refrain from having 401k plan, thinking that all kinds or all options of investment in 401k plan, are prohibited. This is not right. It differs from one company to other. It depends on the policy of the company, the policy of the state in general that you live in. Like, the policy here in Michigan might be different from Texas and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, usually you have some options, and you do have the right to pick, the way or choose the way that your money will be invested. The first one is called stable value fund. It's not more than a CD or a certificate of deposit. They deposit your money in one of the banks, and they give you some interest on it. Usually, it's little. It's less than 4 or 5%. But what is the status of this kind of investment? Definitely, it is prohibited because it's not more than a saving account, and we already covered the status of having saving account. They take your money, the money that you contribute, and the money that they pay on your behalf, and they give it to a third party, the commissioner or the mutual fund, and they invest it on your behalf by re-lending the money to a third party and getting some interest out of it. So the first category is prohibited because it is a stable value fund, or it is a CD or certificate of deposit. The other one, they call it the balanced fund. They divide your money into two halves, 50% for the stocks, 50% for bonds. The definition of bond, actually, it's not more than a loan that you offer for the government. You lend the government a specific amount of money, it is guaranteed, and there is a riba will be added on the top of the amount. So the second option is not to be considered because 50% of your money will be invested in a prohibited way. The third one is an aggressive stock fund. Aggressive stock fund means that all the amounts available in your account will be invested in stocks. Now, what kind of companies? It's a different story. But basically, investing your 401k plan in the aggressive stock fund, is it halal or haram? Is there any interest loan involved in it? There is no interest loan involved in it. However, it depends on what kind of companies you invest in. It will be covered, inshallah, later on. The fourth option is international stock fund. It does not make any difference. Instead of dealing with the local companies or the stocks of the local companies within the US, they do it internationally by buying and selling and trading with some international companies. It does not make any difference. Stocks are stocks, whether they are local, national, international. It does not make any difference. And the fifth option is what is called Emerson stock as a plan of the employee's stock ownership. As a part of the package that they give you, in addition to the salary and the health insurance and the 2 weeks paid vacation and so on and so forth, sometimes they give you an allowance. What means, bonus. What means that if the market value of the stock of the exact company that you work for worth in the stock market 100, they offer it to you only for $50. So they invest, if you agree on that, they invest your whole 401k plan, the whole available amount in the stocks of the exact company that you work for. From our point of view, it does not make any difference. Especially when we assume that practicing people or practicing Muslims do not work for companies who hold an explicit prohibited business. Now, what are the restrictions that we should be aware of when it comes to investing in our 401k plan? The first one, any guaranteed profit is not allowed. If there is a guaranteed profit, then this kind of investment is prohibited. Why? It's the exact question that we always ask. Is it a loan contract or is it a sale contract? If you give your money to somebody else, okay, and there is a guaranteed profit, even if you want to call it profit, from an Islamic point of view, it is riba, because in this case you guarantee your capital, the exact amount that you invested, and the bonus or the additional money added to the capital, which is nothing but riba. So this is why any guaranteed profit is not allowed. The second one, dealing or transacting with the companies who hold prohibited business. Like, for example, any company who has an obscene materials, alcoholic, gambling. I mean, if the core business of the company is prohibited, then dealing with the stocks in the stock market of these companies is prohibited. Dealing with the conventional mortgage companies is prohibited. Dealing with the conventional banks is prohibited. Dealing with insurance companies is prohibited. Casino, alcoholic, again, obscene, anything prohibited in our religion, dealing with the stocks of these companies is prohibited. Other than that, it is allowed to invest in the stock market. It's a kind of trade. You might enjoy profit, you might struggle loss. Now, how to be able to classify the stocks of the companies? Here in the US, there are some companies that are classified as social reasonable fund companies or responsible. Yeah, they help you a lot in classifying the companies. They have their own system, to classify the companies who hold an explicit prohibited business from the companies who have mixed, prohibited and permissible, from the, companies who hold only permissible business. They help you a lot. Like, for example, a Z mutual fund like Amana. If you do have an access, or if you can transfer your 401k plan to any of these companies, that will be great, because they will help you a lot, making sure that the investment will be only with the companies who hold halal business. Buying a house via conventional mortgage. The way that this business is conducted here in the US, from our point of view, is that this kind of transaction contain more than one contract or more than one agreement at the same time. There is a sale contract and there is a loan contract. There is a sale contract, there is a loan contract, and there is a mortgage contract, actually. What do you mean by sale contract? When you like a house to buy, you approach the mortgage company and ask them to finance this house for you, right? After they check your credit and make sure that you are, financially capable to pay the monthly payment on your behalf, they pay the full price of the property to the landlord on your behalf, and then they charge you the exact amount that they have paid on your behalf, plus extra money on a long-term payment plan. Sometimes, they extend it up to 30 years, sometimes 5, 10, whatever it is. Now, there is a sale contract because the client actually is buying a house from the landlord. There is a loan contract because the third party or the mortgage company, they finance the house by paying the price of the house on your behalf to the landlord. And there is a mortgage contract. Mortgage, from an Islamic point of view, means rahan. And believe it or not, a rahan by itself is not only permissible, it is preferred to have it. It is recommended to have it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا كَاتِبًا فَرِهَانٌ مَقْبُوضًا. Rihan actually means exactly, al-rahan or mortgage. So in order for definitely from an Islamic point of view, not from the current point of view applied here in the US. In order for the mortgage company to secure their money, they mortgage the house. What means that they hold the title of the house, and they write their name on the title as a lien holder, not as an owner of the property, until you pay in full the whole amount within the 30 allocated years for this transaction. After you completely finish your payment, they release the deed they remove their name from the deed, and at that time, you will become the only owner of the house. Now, we have a sale contract, we have a loan contract, and we have a mortgage contract. Do we have any problem with the mortgage contract? We do not actually have any. It is sunnah for the lender. I mean, if he wants to, it is permissible, it is recommended for him to secure his money by asking for a lien, for a mortgage. But our serious problem is with the way of financing. Again, it's the exact way that we already covered when we were talking about the finance. There is a third party. The third party does not possess the house. They just skip this level and go to the next level directly by offering this money or giving the money to the landlord, and then they charge you the exact amount that they paid plus extra money, which is definitely a riba, or usurous loan. What kind of riba is involved in this transaction? Is it riba al-fadl or riba al-nasa, riba al-diyun? It is riba al-diyun. It is riba al-fadl or riba al-nasa, riba of increase and riba of delay, because when they pay on your behalf, for example, 100,000, you do not pay them the exact amount at the spot, so you delay your payment, which is riba al-nasa. And instead of paying them 100,000, you pay them 150, which is riba al-fadl. So riba al-fadl and riba al-nasa, both of them are involved in this transaction. Now, how to permit this transaction? How to make it Islamically permissible? As I explained in the previous session, I said some of the Islamic banks in Muslim countries, they do what is called nowadays bay'u al-murabah. It's the same concept, but the only difference is that instead of financing the house directly by paying the price of the house to the landlord, they do buy the house for themselves first. They hold the title not as a lien holder, as an owner, as an owner, and then after that, in an independent and non-stipulated contract, they resell this house to you one more time. What's the point behind buying the house and reselling it one more time? Is it just to charge you extra closing fees? No, because there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that نهى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام عن بيع ما لم يقبض. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited Muslims from selling before possessing. ونهى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام عن ربح ما لم يضمن. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited Muslims from taking profit without taking risk. So you cannot sell before you possess the asset or the property, or you own it for yourself. You cannot take any profit without taking risk. Because if you do not possess, you do not take a risk. And actually this is the exact concept applied when it comes to the loan. The one who advances you the money does not take any risk. He gives you the money. He does not care whether you get profit or you struggle loss. It doesn't make any difference for him. He guarantees his capital plus extra money, which is the exact concept applied here. So this is why it is very essential, very important for the third party to hold the title for himself as an owner, by holding the title, by writing their name as an owner, and then after that they can resell you the house with different price, just to make this transaction permissible. Here is the hadith that I just mentioned. نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيع ما لم يقبض وعن ربح ما لم يضمن. How about the foreclosure crisis now going on here in the US? What does it mean buying a foreclosed house? Is it like buying a house via conventional mortgage, or there is a difference? Actually, there is a slight difference. Foreclosed house, it means that there was a house financed by the mortgage company, and the first client defaulted. He did not pay on time, and the transaction had been terminated or eliminated. So because the mortgage company or the bank was the financier, and because there was a mortgage on it or rahan on it, the bank or the financier repossessed the house for itself. And then, because they do not like to keep the ownership or the possession of the house, they are willing to sell the house one more time for a different client. But in this case, actually, the owner of the house, legally and Islamically, is the bank. This is the this is the major difference between buying a house via conventional mortgage and buying a foreclosed house. The owner is different. In this case, when it comes to foreclosure, actually, the owner is the financier himself. Now, what is the trick here? I mean, why we should talk more about buying houses or foreclosed houses? The problem is that because of the applicable law here in the US, there is a law with the name of Prudent Man Code. Prudent Man Code means that the bank will be held responsible if he did not deal with this transaction, according to the way that it should be done. What means that banks here in the US are not a business. Bank actually is a financial entity. It's not their business to buy houses or to own houses and to resell houses. Their business is to finance. So because of the unregular circumstances, because the first client defaulted, they had no choice but to repossess the house. But it's not their business to buy houses and then to wait, for the market value to be increased and to, resell the house. It's not their job, because, a bank and credit companies and mortgage companies are not more than financial companies. They are not a business companies. So this is why, after the default of the first client, they try their best just to, quote unquote, to get rid of the house by selling it to anyone who is willing just to pay the mortgage or the previous mortgage on the house. So if the market value of the house is $200,000, for example, and the first client already paid $50,000, even if the market value of the house is still $200,000, the bank or the mortgage company is willing to sell this house only for $150,000. They just want to get rid of the house. Now, what does that mean for us as Muslims? I mean, from our point of view, is there any loan involved? Is it a sale contract? Is it a loan contract? Who can help me? I spent actually hours and hours, and I went to some of the banks myself. I had a meeting with the loan officer just to understand the mechanism of selling foreclosed houses. The problem, akhi, is that, again, because of the Prudent Man Code, the bank, Chase, for example, or any other bank, is not willing to sell you the house based on a monthly payment plan. They are not willing to do so. Even though by law, they do have the right to keep the possession or the ownership of the house. They do have the right to lease it or to rent it to whomever they want. They do have the right to sell the house. They do have the right to sell the house while adding a loan contract associated with it at the same time, to keep themselves in the safe side and not to be held responsible in the future in front of the shareholders of the bank. They prefer going with the last option, which is to add a loan contract with the sale contract. What does that mean? If they are willing to sell you the house for $100,000, they do not say, okay, this house is for $100,000 and your monthly payment is $2,000. You have 15 years to pay the full amount. Let's sign and congratulations, this is your house. They do not make it in this way. They say the following: the market value is $100,000. Okay, this is the sale contract. However, if you want to finance, then you have to take a loan. Here we go. You have to take a loan from the bank, $100,000, with an interest of 6% APR. So the total is going to be $150 for 10 years. So there is a sale contract and a loan contract at the same time. So this is why the Fatwa Committee of AMJA, we are 7 members. We kept, negotiating and talking and debating on this issue for maybe 1 month. It took us maybe 3 continuous meetings, okay, to find out the reality of this loan contract. Is it a real loan contract? And based on that, it is subject for all the conditions and the stipulations for the soundness and the correctness of loan contract in Islam, or it is just a nominal loan contract, and it is to be ignored and not to be considered, because the main purpose of this transaction is not to lend you money, it's just to sell you the house and get rid of the house. Now, based on those 2 different approaches, we had 3 different opinions. As of myself, I submitted a research paper regarding buying houses via foreclosure process. Another member with the name, his name is Dr. Muhammad Naeem Sa'i. He did the same, and we kept debating for 3 continuous meetings. As I said, we ended up with the following. We had 3 different approaches. 2 of us out of 7 said that the loan contract associated with the sale contract is just a nominal one. It's not meant by itself. It's not intended to be loan. It's just a way that the bank want to keep himself in the safe side to comply with the prudent man code. They don't like to risk themselves in front of their shareholders by selling a house via installment. They are not interested in that. So there is a loan contract, but it does not have any reality or impact from an Islamic point of view. Even though from a legal point of view, it's there. It's written explicitly, and you have to sign a contract that you are willing to borrow this amount and to pay it with extra money with such and such APR, 5 APR interest. It's explicitly written there. However, 2 of us said that whatever they write down in the contract, it's not to be considered Islamically, because again, they are not interested in lending you the money. They are interested in getting rid of the house and selling it to you. And we always consider the purposes of the contracts, not the name or the title of the contract in Islam. This is one approach. The other approach is that they said no. There is a loan contract. It is meant by itself, and every single word in the contract, it has its meaning from a legal point of view. So there is a loan contract associated with the sale contract. So this is why this transaction is prohibited, even though the owner is the financer himself. And the third approach, they said, we get confused. We need more time to keep investigating and searching more to adopt one of the 2 opinions. So we ended up with just a declaration from the Fatwa Committee. It's not a fatwa, it's a declaration that we did 1, 2, 3, 4. We ended up with having those 3 approaches, and it's up to the Muslim community. If you wanna go with the first approach, which is buying a house, foreclosed houses, that will be fine. And this is my personal opinion and the opinion of Dr. Walid Minesi. He's a member in the Fatwa Committee, mashallah. He's a scholar and PhD holder in Islamic studies, fully involved in hadith and fiqh, and has a very solid background in the fiqh al-Islami and the hadith. He shared the same opinion with me that this loan contract is just a nominal one. It's a fake one Islamically. It's not to be considered, because you cannot take the money. I mean, if you want to buy the house, you cannot take the money. You cannot use the money for any other purposes. The owner and the financer, in this case, is the same entity, which is the bank. There is no intention of lending you money. It's just a way for the bank to keep himself on the safe side. So we do not consider this loan at all, and we say that buying foreclosed houses is permissible. Wallahu a'lam.